Hey, mystery lovers! Welcome to the Secrets of the Hanging Dolls. Prepare to be captivated by secrets, disappearances, and chilling discoveries. In a small isolated village nestled deep within the forest, there lived an old woman known as Marga. She lived alone in a weathered cabin at the edge of the woods, far from the heart of the village. Her home was surrounded by dense trees, each one draped with hanging dolls, swaying gently in the breeze like strange, forgotten ornaments. These dolls, made from straw, cloth and bits of wood, were uncanny. Some had crooked smiles, while others wore blank, expressionless faces. The village children whispered about them, telling stories of how Marga would make a new doll each time a storm passed. But none of the villagers truly knew why the dolls hung there. Most avoided the cabin entirely, brushing off the eerie sight as the whims of a lonely, eccentric old woman. But one day, a little girl named Lila disappeared. She had been playing near the woods, and when her parents called her name, she did not come home. Days passed, and despite search parties combing through the forest, Lila was nowhere to be found. Her father, Jonas, was a broken man, refusing to give up the search, even as the villagers whispered of wolves or other dark things lurking in the woods. One night, as the moon hung low and heavy, Jonas decided to search near Marga's cabin. No one dared to go near it, but desperation outweighed his fear. He approached the old woman's home, the forest eerily silent around him. The trees loomed, and the hanging dolls swung gently in the night air, their twisted faces catching the moonlight. Jonas knocked on Marga's door, his knuckles trembling as they met the weathered wood. The door creaked open, revealing the hunched figure of the old woman. Her eyes, sharp and bright despite her age, bore into him. "I'm looking for my daughter," Jonas said, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's been missing for days. Have you seen her?" Marga said nothing for a moment, her gaze drifting past him to the dolls swaying in the trees. "No," she finally rasped, her voice like dried leaves scraping across stone. "I've seen no children." But as Jonas turned to leave, something caught his eye, a glint of bright, familiar cloth hanging from one of the dolls outside. His heart stopped. It was Lila's dress, the same one she'd been wearing the day she disappeared. He rushed to the tree, his breath catching in his throat as he reached for the doll. Up close, the truth was undeniable. The doll wasn't made of straw or cloth. Its tiny body was cold and rigid. Its eyes, horrifyingly real, stared blankly back at him. Lila's eyes. As his fingers grazed the tiny figure, he heard it, soft, almost imperceptible, like a faint whisper carried on the wind. "Help!" The voice was distant and fragile, unmistakably familiar. Jonas staggered backward, his eyes darting from one doll to the next. The air around him was filled with the softest of cries, the faint murmurings of voices, long thoughts silenced. They were weak, distorted, as if coming from deep within the dolls themselves. "Papa, please help me." His heart pounded in his chest as he stared at Lila's doll. The cries were haunting, pulling at the very fabric of his soul. The other children, their voices mingled together in a chorus of pain and fear. It was as though the very trees were weeping. Jonas's breath hitched as the enormity of the horror washed over him. They were all still here, their souls imprisoned in these grotesque forms, their cries muffled by layers of straw, cloth and wood. "Let them go!" Jonas screamed, tears streaming down his face. "Let them go!" Marga's smile faded, her eyes darkening. "You don't understand," she hissed. "They were lonely. I gave them peace. I gave them a place where they would never grow old, never be hurt by the world." Her words twisted like a knife in Jonas's gut. "Peace," This was no peace. This was a prison of unspeakable cruelty. He could still hear the voices, faint, pleading, begging to be set free. "Please, help us," they whispered in unison, the sound rising with every second. The air thickened with their sorrow, suffocating him. Summoning every ounce of strength, Jonas lunged at Marga, but before he could reach her, she stepped back into the shadows of her cabin, disappearing into the darkness as though she had never been there at all. Desperation clawed at Jonas as the cries of the children grew louder in his ears, a cacophony of despair. He could no longer bear it. He raced back to the village, shouting for help, his mind fractured by the chilling truth of what he had uncovered. The villagers, roused by his frantic cries, followed him to the old woman's cabin. They tore down the dolls from the trees one by one, discovering the truth, the bodies of their lost children, preserved in the cruel craft of an old woman's twisted magic. But when they went to confront Marga, she was gone. The cabin stood empty, and no one ever saw her again. The village burned the cabin to the ground, but the memory of the dolls haunted them forever. Though the bodies of the lost children were laid to rest, their souls were never truly freed. The faint voices still lingered in the wind, soft as a sigh, reminding the villagers of the darkness that had lived among them and of the trees that had once held their children captive, crying out for help that had come far too late. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to stay updated for more mysterious tales. Until then, keep your curiosity alive and your lights on. Thanks for watching.